Welcome back, and on the details. Severe drought in Zambia is threatening hunger for millions of people, cutting off electricity for a long period and destroying the country's social fabric and economy. The Environment Minister has warned in Benga of what is in store for the region as the climate crisis worsens. Colin Zohu said the crippling drought in his country was experiencing hammered home the message that developing countries were facing catastrophe from the climate crisis, even as richer countries fall to most financial help for the most affiliated. What has happened this year is that we receive well below the normal rainfall. This has been a creeping drought. He said, we have had a huge crop failure. A lot of people who have depend on maize, who depend on agriculture for their very survival, face starvation and hunger. The rainfall in February, when maize, the country's crop, reached the stage with the grain fell. A lack of rainfall at that time means there is a little prospect of saving most of the crops. At that period, we had basically almost no rainfall at all, so that made things very, very bad. People are reaching the end of their food stores, and importing from other countries in the region has become very harder as they are too feeling the impact of the drought. Food supply have come from South Africa and Tanzania, but these are uncertain in the months to come. An Israeli airstrike triggered a fire that killed 45 people in a tent camp in the Gazan city of Rafah, officials said on Monday, prompting an outcry from global leaders who urged the implementation of the order to halt Israel's assault. Palestinian families rushed to hospital to prepare their dead for burials after a strike later on Sunday night set tent and strict sea metal shattered ablaze. Israel's military, which is trying to eliminate Hamas in Gaza, said it was investigating reports that is of the Islamic militant group in Rafah has caused the fire. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the strike had not been intended to cause civilians casualties. In Rafah, we already evacuated about 1 million non-concubine residents, and despite our almost efforts not to harm non-concubines, something unfortunately went tragically wrong, he said in a speech in Parliament that was interrupted by the shouting from the opposition lawmakers. Survivors said families were preparing to sleep when the strike hit the Townhouse Tan neighborhood, where thousands were shattered after Israeli forces began a ground offensive in the east of Rago. We were praying and we were getting ready to there was nothing usual. Then he had a very loud noise and fire erupted around, or said Mohammed Al-Mata, a Palestinian mother in a red headscarf. All the children started screaming. The sound was terrifying. We felt like the metal was about to collapse on us, and shrapnel fell into the rooms. Video footage obtained by Reuters showed the fire raging in the darkness and people screaming in panic. A group of young men tried to haul away shed of categories, iron, and a hose from the single fire truck began to douse. The flames, more than half of the dead were women, children, and elderly people, health officials in the Hamas-run Gaza said, adding that the death toll was likely to rise from people with severe burns. More than 100 air trucks managed to reach the Gaza Strip by Monday morning after an agreement to reroute aid through the Kerem Shalom border crossing, but supply have not been distributed and an ongoing Israeli assault, such said. Deliveries were badly needed as little aid has reached southern Gaza since May 6, when Israel took control of the Palestinian side of the Rafah border crossing, about 3.5 km from Kerem Shalom and the main entry point into Gaza for humanitarian and commercial supplies. The latest arrival would be the biggest aid delivery in southern Gaza by far since the launch of Israel's attack in Rafah, with almost days seeing no truck crossing the border. Israeli forces began a ground offensive in the east of Rafah over 3 weeks ago. An Israeli strike on Sunday triggered a fire that killed 45 people in a tent camp in Rafah, officials said on Monday, prompting an outcry from global leaders. Egyptian security sources said that 123 aid trucks has crossed the border and handed over the goods to the United Nations. An Israeli source confirmed the aid has been brought into Gaza, said they handed over to partners. An Egyptian aid source said 4 fuel tanks has also crossed the border. But Palestinian trucks that went to pick up the aid at the crossing returned empty, UN and the Palestinian officials said. Trucks moved through, but it was not possible to collect them due to the rocket attack yesterday and the IAF strike overnight, said the UN officials in Gaza, adding that the supplies belongs to UN's Palestinian Aid Agency, NURWA, and the World Food Programme. On Friday, Egypt and United States agreed to utilize Kerem Sharon until agreements were made to reopen Rafah from the Palestinian side. The Egyptian presidency said Egypt has refused to coordinate with Israel on the crossing. About 200 trucks were expected to come in on Sunday, still below the official said is needed in a strap home to 2.3 million people, where monitored said famine in some parts is imminent. KS Rifle, the Saudi-funded charity, on Monday sent a ship carrying nearly 500 tons of aid, including food, medical supplies, and shelter materials for Gaza. The group supervisor, General Abdullah I. Reba, said. 44 fighting carrying a cabin 8,200 pilgrims from Yemen's Sana'a International Airport to Saudi Arabia's Jeddah will start operating from May 28. 3 sources from Yemen's government and the Yemeni Saudi group told Reuters. Flights from Sana'a Airport are limited to 1 near-daily service to Jeddah since the UN broke a ceasefire in Yemen that took effect in April 2022. Last December, the commercial Jeddah flights were suspended, but in October, the national airline resumed them after a row between the country's warring parties over control of the carriage funds. Prior to April 2022, the airport had been closed due to nearly a decade of war between the Saudi-led coalition and the Houthis group that can now control most of the country. State held consultation on maritime affairs in which both countries agreed to maintain dialogue and manage risks. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said on Tuesday, China said both sides exchanged views last Friday on the maritime situation, agreed to maintain communication and avoid misunderstandings and miscalculations. The Foreign Ministry said China expressed serious concern over the United States infringement and of provocation in the nearby waters and urged Washington to intervene in dispute between China and its neighbors or use the sea to control China. The United States should immediately stop supporting and condemning Taiwan independence forces, the ministry added. The United States maintained direct interaction with Taiwan, including armed cells with Belgium opposes. China claims democratically govern Taiwan as its own territory, but Taiwan's government rejects Belgium's sovereignty claims. China has also urged the United States not to take side in South China Sea after Washington in March extended a security deal with the Philippines to include attacks on the Southeast Asian nation Coast Guard. Assertion that all the arrivals in China will face mobile telephone checks from July face our force authorities said on Tuesday, dismissing them as distortion of the truth made by the anti-China forces. On April 26, the State Security Ministry issued documents. It said bordering the reach of the law enforcement regulations and help combat illegal activities that risk national security. However, some hostile overseas anti-China forces have seized on the opportunity to distort the truth by making scandalous and false allegations. The ministry said in a statement on its public WhatsApp account, in particular, it dismissed an absolute prosperous claim that all the arrivals would undergo phone check upon entering. A new national security rules drew wide public attention and posed feedback, he said, adding that the newly mandated counter-spontaneous law sets specific regulations on lawful inspection of electronic equipment and facilities. Targets of such inspection must be individuals or organizations related to counter-espionage works, such as suspected spies who took pictures or videos in military-restricted areas or classified units, the military said. The incidents come after Chinese lawmakers extended a state secret law this year for the first time since 2010, widening the scope of restricted sensitive information to include that were described as work secrets. Thailand's government said on Tuesday it has approved longer visa stay period for tourists, postgraduate students and remote workers, and better visa condition for retirees in a move to boost its crucial tourism sector as economic shutters. Starting in June, Thailand will allow travelers from 93 countries to stay from a period of 60 days, up from the current 57 nations, which more will be eligible for visas on arrival, government spokesperson Chai Wachrongke told reporters. Foreign students will be permitted to stay for an additional year upon graduation, while insurance requirements for foreigners seeking to retire in Thailand will be relaxed, he added. Tourism is a key driver of Southeast Asia's second largest economy and the big source of employment. The new measures come as part of an effort to boost visitors in the main and fastest growing market by extending stay limits to 60 days from 30 days on arrival visa. The validity of the so-called digital mode visa for self-employed remote workers will be extended to 5 years from 60 days presently, which each stayed limited to 180 days. Thailand recorded 14.3 million tourists in from January in May 26 this year and is targeting a record 50 million foreign arrivals from the full year, with revenue of 3.5 trillion baht. In pre-pandemic 2019, Thailand welcomed a record 39.9 million arrivals, generating 1.91 trillion baht. North Korea's latest satellite launch exploded in fireballs before dropping into the Yellow Sea just minutes after lifting off. But analysts said the attempt showcased new stride in the nuclear-armed country's race for space. North Korea said Open New Tab, its latest attempt to launch a military reconnaissance satellite, fell in flight on Mondays during the rocket's phase stage, which features a new liquid oxygen and petroleum engines. An initial analysis suggested that the cause of the failure is with fuel rocket motor, but other possible causes were being investigated. A report carried by state media KCNA said, although state media did not name the rocket or release photos, analysts said it was most likely different from the Koilima-1 rocket used in a successful satellite launch in November 2023. A Koilima-1 also suffered several explosion test failure, uses hypergolic fuel substance and can be stored at room temperature but ignites on contact with others, requiring careful handling. U.S. officials and independent analysts said the Koilima-1 appear to be based on a system developed for North Korea's nuclear-strapped intercontinental lines, which typically do not use liquid oxygen because a fringe temperature required a storage. A petroleum fuel and a liquid oxygen engine may suggest that Russia which vowed last year to help North Korea's satellite program, may have provided assistance, says Liu Chong-jung, on honorary research following a South Korea's Sciences and Technology Policy Institute. Even if it fell, it is a huge lab, he said, noting that some of the South Korean space rockets were initially developed with Russia decades ago and used similar technology. Russia is the strongest country for liquid oxygen kerosene fuel, and our Nero and Nuri rocket has adopted it through the technical cooperation with Russia. Liquid oxygen boils at 18.3 Celsius and requires specialist fuel storage and other equipment, Liu said. That may account for why North Korea conducted multiple static rocket tests last year, is added. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te thanked fighters pilot who had scrambled against China last week during its war game around the island, as he was briefed on the event of the frontline air base on Tuesday. China, which claimed democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory, stated 2 days of duress last Thursday for Lai's inauguration speech that week. Taiwan condemned the exercise. China said Lai is a specialist and has never renounced the use of force to bring Taiwan under its control. Lai rejects Belgium's sovereignty claim, saying only the island people can decide their future, and has repeatedly offered talks. Visiting the East Coast Air Base on Holian, which is home to Taiwan's most advanced fighter jet, the F-16VS, Lai had launched with some of the pilots who scrambled during the drills. I would like to thank all brothers and sisters for sticking to their posts and protecting national security, he added. In a recent day, in response to the Chinese military exercise, everyone did a good job. Lai said he received a detailed brief on the pilot's response and the abilities of the Taiwan fighters. Everyone is on standby in 24-hour shifts to reform a patrol mission, he added. With firm determination and excellent combat skills, you are making full use of your combat power and protecting our airspace. Soldiers also demonstrated the loading and howitzer for Lai. Some hangars at the Orleans base are cut out of the side of new beginning and call for its comprehensive resumption of cooperation between East Asia economic powerhouses. But for this to happen, politics should be separated from economic and trade issues. He added, calling for an end to protectionism and the recoupling of supply. For China, Korea, and Japan, our close tie would not change. The spirit of cooperation achieved through crisis response and will not change, and our mission to safeguard regional space and stability will not change, Lai said. The meeting itself was seen as a mark of progress for three countries whose relations are marked as much as suspicion and recontour as by construction and engagements. The trilateral summit in more than reducing faction that reshaping geopolitical politics, said Lai's Eric L. Sler, a professor at Ewha University in Seoul. China and U.S. allies, South Korea and Japan, are trying to manage mutual distrust and by rivaling between Belgium and Washington tension over democratical rule in Taiwan, which China claims as its own, and North Korea's nuclear weapon programs. Yo and Kyoshida has charted a closer course with each other, and to Washington embarking on unprecedented three-way cooperation with the United States as military and other measures. U.S. President Joe Biden has raised barriers to Chinese import, hiking tariff on the rare of Chinese imports, including electric vehicle batteries and computer chips. Donald Trump, his rival in the November presidential election, has flaunted higher on all the Chinese goods. Torrential rain brought by Cyclone Remal caused a collapse in a stone quarry in India's state of Mizoram, killing 15 people and trapping 7, while 8 more died in a landslide and other accidents elsewhere in the remote region, officials said. Weather authorities said a powerful cyclone had weakened into the depression after devastating regional coast. Weather was hampering efforts on Tuesday to rescue at least 7 people trapped in the quarry on the outskirts of Aziwal, the capital of northeast Ziroram, the disaster management officials said. There have been miscreant rain in the week of Cyclone Ramal, which led to the quarry collapse. One of them told Reuters, speaking on the condition of enmity. 7 other people were killed in the landslide in Mizoram, which shared a border with Bangladesh, while the fallen 3 people, 1 person in nearby Assam, officials said are schools and college short. Authorities in India's eastern side of West Bengal were working in the worst affected areas after Ramal struck power lines and uprooted trees. Ramal is a phase of the frequent storm expected to pound the low-lying coast of the South Asian neighbors this year as climate change drive up sea surface temperature reported 3 times before because of the technical issues, including 1 flight that was cancelled about 90 seconds before let-off. The launch scheduled for 5:45 a.m. IST on Tuesday was faced delay less than 6 minutes before let-off due to the technical glitch in the countdown activities. An official set a new let-off time of 9:25 a.m. However, the launch was put to temporary hold to check igniter performance, then was called off altogether. The mission was expected to last 2 minutes, and from the company's sky route was flown from ISRO's launch site in 2022, founded in 2017 at Kenko, whose name is driven from the Hindi and a Sanskrit word for fire runs. This country's face private landscape and mission control centers, which ISRO operates all other launch pads. You are watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. Will return after this short break.
Corruption not in my country.
I don't get a lot. Boy, they won't booga me small. They say, man, give them bribe. I say, nothing. Okay, now, we'll go block later. You remember that contract we will do that time now? They don't pay.
But first, you see the house rent with the old things. We go first call caretaker, take the money, slap him.
Beg, see, you know, say I get annual levy why they pay for club. Where me and boys they shark beer in our house, I supposed to pay that one. You remember say me and tell you I go buy you motor. I go buy now.
Okay, they pay you money now. What would they beg caretaker? What would they beg landlord, old man, and they agree give us time. Money can't come now. You won't divert time. You said na corruption. Corruption, not in my house and not in my country.
Sure?
Sure.
Corruption not in my country.
This message is brought to you by the Akinfade Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation,
and with broadcast support from Atlantic Television Network.
People into the country illegally. That is amazing.
Honorable
You human trafficker.
Honorable they are not picking our calls. They made up their minds.
So no agreement with the EU, but
Kasali, I hope my card already. I get interview in 30 minutes.
Welcome back. You're watching international news on Atlantic Television Network, and now the rest of our stories. On Monday to support displaced Syrian, but it dismissed any notion of them being able to return home because of instability under Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Before an EU-led honor conference on return to Syria. The EU conference aimed to keep the war on the agenda as well as support for the millions of refugees it has created. But the economics and the social burden on neighboring countries mounts the bloc in dividends and unable to find solution, diplomats says. Refugees returning home is not yet one of them. However, the bloc foreign policy chief Josep Borrell made clear at the start of the conference why the European Union said that returning home could be the realistic opinion for all the refugees. Everywhere and always, we are concord with the United Nations system that currently the conditions for safe, voluntary and dignified return to Syria are not in place, Borrell said. We insist that it is the Assad regime that bears the primary responsibility for putting in place these conditions. Borrell said the bloc was pledging 560 million euros in 2024 and 2025 to support refugees in Syria, Lebanon, Iraq and Jordan, and a further 1 billion euros for Turkey. Syria has become a forgotten crisis that nobody wants to stir, and the Israelis war in Gaza and tension growing between Iran and Western powers over its regional activities. Although Assad has long since reinstated control over most of the Syria in the war that began with 2011 uprising against him, more than 5 million refugees, mostly in Lebanon, Turkey and Jordan, and millions more displaced initially still have little prospect of returning home. We are going to be sending a very clear message from Jordan as a host community that we feel that refugees have been abandoned. Hyman Safadi told reporters on arrival in the Brazil host community are being abandoned. Iran is enriching uranium to close the weapon gap at the steady pace between discussions aim at improving its cooperation with the UN nuclear watchdog, as told to confidential reports by the watchdog showed on Monday. The International Atomic Energy Agency faced a range of difficulties in Iran, including the fact it only implemented a small fraction of the steps IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi stored its committed to in a joint statement on cooperation last year. There has been no progress in the past years towards implementing the joint of 4 March 2023. One of the two reports to member states, both of which were seen by Reuters, said. Grossi traveled to Iran this month for talks with Iranian officials aimed at improving cooperation and IAEA monitoring in Iran. Followed-up talks have stalled, however, after the death of Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi in the helicopter crash last week. The Director General reinstated to the new government of Iran is called for, and this position to continue with their high-level dialogue and ensuring technical exchange commenced on 6 to 7 May 2024, the report added. It is 18 months since the IAEA's 35-nation Board of Governors last passed a resolution against Iran ordering it to cooperate urgently with a years-long IAEA investigations into uranium particles found at 3 undeclared sites. While the number of the sites has been reduced to 2, Iran has still not explained how the trace got there. Director General regretted that the outstanding safeguard issues have not been resolved, the report said, referring to those traces. France and Britain are pushing for a new resolution at next week's board meeting, which the United States has so far not supported. Diplomats said Iran usually bristled at each resolution took nuclear-related steps in response. The other report said Iran's stock of uranium enriched to up to 60% purity, close to the roughly 90% of weapons grade, grew by 20.6 kg over the quarter to 142.1 kg as of May 11, and Iran later dilutes 5.9 kg to the lower enrichment level. That means Iran now has roughly enough materials enriched to up to 60% purity, if enriched further, for 3 nuclear weapons in theory, according to the IAEA yardstick. It has enough for more at lower enrichment levels. More than 100 business leaders have given their support to Britain's opposition Labour Party before the July 4th election, says the country needs to end the instability and stagnation that has Fascist Sunak governing conversation has typically been the party of the big business part, but Labour's finance policy chief Rachel Reeves has spent years counting business owners in a bid to show her party can be trusted to run the economy. The letter signed by current and former chief executive in retail, advertising, travel and finance said Labour has shown it had changed and should be given a chance to shape the country's future. We as leaders and investors in Britain's business believe that it is time for exchange, a change, and later said we are in urgent need of a new outlook to break free from the stagnation of the last decades, and we hope by taking this public stand we might pursue order of that need too. Labour will hope the endorsement shows that it is no longer the party of Starmer's predecessor, veteran left-wing lawmakers Jermaine Corbyn, who campaigned at the last election in 2019 to renationalize some key assets and hike tax on the rich. Leaders who signed the letter include the boss of Retailer Ireland, the chairman of JP Sports, and the head of the UK arm of ad giant WPP, the former CEO of Aston Martin, and the founder of the children's companies that once includes Sunak's wife Ashata Muti as an investor. Starmer's Labour have held an around 20-point lead in poll for almost a year. It has accused the government of 14 years of economic mismanagement, failing to give business and stability in crave and leaving people worsen off. Britain's economic performance since the coronavirus pandemic has been the weakest among the group of 7 economies, with the exception of Germany, washing down by a high level of debt and stuck in a route of slow growth. Ukraine and Belgium on Tuesday struck a bilateral security agreement, including the delivery of 30 F-16 fighters jets, signed during a Brazil meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo. The documents include at least 977 million euros in Belgian military aid to Ukraine this year, as well as Belgium's commitment to providing support over the course of the agreement. 10 years, Tim Zelensky said in a social media post. Russian forces captured 2 villages in Ukraine, the defense ministry said on Monday. The settlements were Ivankia in a Kharkiv region and Netolov in Donetsk. The Ukrainian military general staff said in a report late on Sunday its force had repelled an attack near Lavinska, east of the town of Kupiansky. In a report on Monday evening, the general staff said Ukrainian forces has repelled 7 Russian advance in a Kupiansky sector. Russian forces has recorded partial success in one of the areas of the Kupiansky sector, it added, and Ukrainian forces are taking measures to stabilize the situation and prevent the enemy from advancing. Terrando's powering thunderstorm that swept the southern plains and the Oskay Mountains have killed at least 21 people across 4 U.S. states as of Monday afternoon and waxed hundreds of buildings as forecast forecasters warn of more severe weather. The death toll over the 3 days Memories Days holiday weekend, including at least 8 fatalities in Arkansas, 7 in Texas, 4 in Kentucky, and 2 in Oklahoma, accordingly to tariffs by state emergency authorities. A severe thunderstorm watch was issued for part of New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. Until Monday evening, the National Weather Service said the watch was in effect for more than 30 million people in the Northeast, as the storm were expected to move to that part of the East Coast. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear declared a state of emergency earlier on Monday. The Weather Service opened new tab issues a severe thunderstorm watch for the Atlanta area and other parts of Georgia, and for the several western South countries until at least Monday afternoon. It was a tough night for our people, Beshear posted on social media platform X on Monday. He later said in a press briefing that devastating storm has hit almost the entire state. The storm damaged 100 state highways and roads, officials said. At least 7 people perished, including a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old from the family, and nearly 100 were injured on Saturday night when a powerful tornado struck communities in North Texas, where the Oklahoma border. Governor Greg Abbott told Sunday news conference. Late on Sunday, Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders said at least 8 people died in the state after the storm. And Arkansas suffering from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease died due to lack of oxygen when the power went out. Joe Biden offered condolence for the lives lost on Monday. Governor Kelvin Steve and Governor Abbott and Sanders, the White House said. New York prosecutor and Donald Trump's lawyer made their closing argument at its hush money trials on Tuesday in a final bid to influence a 12 juror who decided whether he will become the first U.S. president passed or president convicted of a crime. After 6 weeks of trials, prosecutors argued on Tuesday Trump's 77 illegal falsified business documents to cover up evidence of the payments that brought the silence of porn star Stormy Daniels before the 2016 presidential election. Trump's defense team will try to convince Jr. he is not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, the standard required by the U.S. law. Trump denies Daniels' allegation of sexual encounter in 2006 when he was married to his current wife, Melania. Trump's legal team called 2 witnesses of their own, and the former president himself did not testify. Instead, they have tried to raise doubt about the credibility of the prosecution witnesses, most notably Michael Collin, who testifies that as Trump's fixer, he handled the payment to Daniels, and the Trumps approved a cover-up during cross-examination. Trump's lawyer got Cohen to discuss this felony conviction and imprisonment, his history of lying, and his lingering animosity for his former boss. Cohen also attempted to steal him from the Trump's company. If found guilty, Trump faces up to 4 years in prison, although imprisonment is unlikely for the first-time felony convicted of such a crime. A conviction will not prevent Trump from trying to take back the White House from Democratic President Joe Biden as a Republican candidate in November 5th election, and it prevents him from taking office if he won. Opinion polls show 2 candidates locked in a tight space. Trump's faced 84 felony count of falsifying business record, normally a misdemeanor under the New York law. Prosecutors in Matana District Attorney Alvin Braga office elevated those charged to felonies, saying Trump falsified those records to disguise what amounted to an illegal company contribution. The payment that brought donor silence about the alleged 2006 sexual time when Trump was already facing multiple accusations of sexual misconduct. Trump has pleaded not guilty and denied wrongdoing. His lawyers have implied that the 100 payment for Daniel's silence was intended to spare Trump's family from to protect his White House bid. Prosecutors will cite testimony to argue otherwise. Trump faced 3 other criminal prosecution as well, but none is likely to go to trials before the election. Separate cases in Washington and Georgia accuse him of illegal trying to overturn his 2020 election defeat, while another case in Florida charges him with mishandling classified information after he left office in 2021. U.S. President Joe Biden honored fallen soldiers during the 156th observance of Memories Day at Arlington National Cemetery, the nation's capital, on Monday. Biden pledged a word of flowers at the tomb at the unknown soldiers in the solemn ceremony, where he was accompanied by the Vice President Kamala Harris and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. We are gathered at this sacred place at this solemn moment to remember, to honor the sacrifice of the hundreds of thousands of women and men who have their lives for the nation, Biden said after word at the cemetery. Earlier in the day, Biden hosted a White House breakfast in honor of Memorial Day that included administration officials, military leadership, veterans, and so-called Gold Star family members, referring to those who have lost an immediate relatives in military action. The Memorial Day ceremony is the latest in the strat of events where Biden has focused on achieved and retired military personnel, including delivering the commencement speech on Saturday at the U.S. Military Academy in West Point, New York. Next week, the president will travel to Normandy, France, to participate in a ceremony marking the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion. He is expected to give a major speech about the heroism of Allied forces in World War II and the continuing threats to democracy today. Thursday will mark the 9th anniversary of the death of Biden's son, Bill, who served in Iraq as part of Delaware National Guard. Bill died from glioblastoma, a highly aggressive form of brain cancer that his father believed was possibly a consequence of exposure to military-borne pit in Iraq. This week marked 9 years since I lost my son Bill. Biden said our losses are not the same. He didn't perish on the battlefield. He died a cancer victim. The pain of his loss is with me every day, so it is the pride in his service, the president said. On Memorial Day, each gravesite at Arlington will have a small American flag carefully positioned exactly 1 boot length away from the headstone. The flags were placed by 1,500 soldiers from the Army, 3rd Infantry Regiment, better known as the Old Guard. The regiment was carried out by tradition known as Flag In just before Memory Day every year since 1948, when it was designated as the Army Official Ceremonial Unit. And that's the size of the package. Before we go, let's look at the major headlines. Zambia, several droughts threaten high hunger for millions, cut electricity. Gaza, air trucks reach Gaza Strip after agreement to reroute. North Korea, latest satellite launch exploded in Fireball's unit minutes after liftoff. United Kingdom business leaders give support to Labour Party upcoming elections. United States President Biden honor fallen soldiers observance Memorial Day. Australia PM James Marape might face no confidence motion. I am Immaculata Irikana. Thank you for watching. You can join us on all our media platforms, Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network, Instagram and TikTok, Atlantic TV Network 1, X Atlantic TV Net. You can also watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. Do remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Good afternoon.